Just taking a few minutes to let folks join.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Keegan, and I'm going to help with Zoom today. I'm one of the event moderators for East Bay Meditation Center. We're really happy to have you joining us today. So I'm going to put some instructions in the chat throughout this. You're also welcome to use the chat to react, or your emoji button using the reactions key below. We do have closed captioning today, so you can find that by hitting maybe more on your screen and captions, or just the little closed captions. We'll put more instructions in the chat. And Crystal is going to lead us today. If any questions or concerns or access needs come up, please just let me know privately in the chat, or you can also email White and Awakening and Sangha to connect with us later, and I'll put that email there as well. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand things over to Crystal.
Hi, thank you so much, Anna. Welcome, everyone. I'm super happy to have you here and to be together with you. So, as Keegan said, there are closed captions. So if you need them, they're along the bottom of your Zoom screen. And there's also instructions in the chat. And just as a matter of housekeeping, we're going to do small groups in a little bit. If you can't be or don't want to be in a small group, please chat Anna privately or Keegan privately, or just rename yourself with an X in front of your name. That will help us keep everybody straight. Okay, so the song that we played coming in is familiar to many of you, but it's Sweet Honey in the Rock. The song is We Are the Ones. And I really like it because, you know, sometimes we think, oh, well, someone is going to come and fix things, and like the action is somewhere else, or someone else knows. But actually, we are the ones. And it's a song based on a poem that recounts the anti-apartheid protests of thousands of Black and Indian women in Pretoria, South Africa in 1956. And so it has a good, lineage. So welcome to the East Bay Meditation Center. For purposes of orientation, this is White and Awakening, continuing on the path. And we'll be using the wisdom of the Eightfold Path in these 5 meetings to talk together about our kind of journey of whiteness, our work of anti-racism, and our work for the end of suffering. We will be recording the class, but we'll only record the parts where I'm talking. We won't record you. So don't worry about that, but we want to have a partial recording available so that for people who can't make it, they can catch up a little bit. So I'm Crystal Johnson, as you may well know, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm actually, in spite of what my name says, I'm coming to you today from Ohlone territory. So I'm in Oakland today, and happy to be here. We're having some sun today. Yesterday was the Interfaith March for the ceasefire, and it rained enthusiastically on those marching. And so it's nice to have a sunny day today. So we're gathered as people who have experienced and are experiencing, of course, conditioning of whiteness. And I want to acknowledge that among us or within this group, it's still a lot of diversity. So I want to welcome all genders and all sexualities, all non-harming sexualities, all economic situations, all ages, all levels of physical ability, all mental states, um, all spiritualities, all religions, all ethnic and national backgrounds, all languages. Really to just say, like, this is a time for us to be together with one commonality, which is that we're conditioned into whiteness, but still a lot of difference and diversity in our group. So super happy to have you here and to be with you today. Um, let's take a moment to um, look at each other. And I guess we should turn the recording off for just a second so that people can recording again, and we'll go back to the speaker view. There we go. Okay. So let's do a brief practice together, and then I'd like to, kind of offer a small group time. We'll talk about the agreements for multicultural interactions, and then, yeah. All right. So, Iliam, I'm sorry to know that you need to leave, but thank you for taking care of yourself. So I invite you to kind of settle in, um, whether you're sitting or standing or lying down. And if it feels comfortable to close your eyes, please do. And if not, just lower the gaze. Just bring your attention to the physical body, to whatever aspects are accessible to you. So if the breath is accessible to you, by all means, bring your attention to the breath. And if that isn't a good object for meditation, notice your feet on the floor, your body on a cushion or a chair, whatever allows you to just settle in, coming into the present moment. Sort of notice how the body's doing. Sensations are present. Go of the thinking, letting go of whatever it took for you to get here. Trying to do anything or be any particular way, but really just noticing and taking a moment in this beautiful present moment. Noticing what's happening in the body. if you're ready, if it works for you, I invite you to turn your attention to your intentions for joining the class today. What brings you here? Of course, it's more than one thing, and there may be some contradictory things, or you may not be sure. Just gently asking yourself, why have I come? What am I hoping for? Ask again, why have I come? What am I hoping for? Just inquiring, why have I come? What am I hoping for? And then when you're ready, maybe take one more breath and bring your attention back to the Hollywood squares on our screens. Okay. So again, welcome to the East Bay Meditation Center. And for those who are new, I'd like to share the, and actually to remind us all of the agreements for multicultural interactions. So Anna, if Keegan, if you could share that slide. And really, these are the guidelines. These are the ways that we kind of our agreements for how we interact with each other. And it's a way to create a space that's safe enough. so we can create a brave space together, kind of outside of a lot of our conditioned habits of interaction. And so I'll just go through them quickly. They are available on the resource page. They're available on the EBMC website. And so I guess one of our basic agreements is that we can speak up and we need to let people know what our needs are. So Keegan, at least I'm not seeing the agreements on the screen. There we go. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I think in part we just did understanding the difference between intent and impact, that we can be doing our thing, whatever our thing is, and it can have an impact that we don't intend and that we don't want. And so being sensitive to our impact is an important aspect of what we're trying to do together. Confidentiality, I'm just going to do them backwards now since I'm starting at the end. Confidentiality, we may reveal personal things or we may have very heartfelt shares. So we can take home our learnings, but not identify who says what or even really talk about anyone but ourselves. And if you do have contact with someone from the group, like in the small group or outside, before you bring up something with them that they mentioned, ask if it's okay. Because, we share things in the sort of the heat of the moment and the energy of the group that we may not want to keep talking about later. Move up, move back. We all have different conditioning and temperaments. Some of us tend to take a lot of space. Some of us tend to make a lot of space. And so we're trying to have folks who take a lot of space move back, and those who offer a lot of space to move forward so that we can really kind of be together and with the space. Practice mindful listening. This is deep listening to each other. And if I'm listening to you, thinking about what I'm going to say next, that is not deep listening. Listening is so powerful, and we do so little of it, and we receive so little of it, that it's a very valuable gift of community. Practice both and. I'll talk in a minute about kind of the polarization of our times and how we really need the both and right now, to honor multiple realities, to honor multiple perspectives. Because the most important thing is that we are in community and contact with each other, not that we are the same. Although, of course, at some deep level, we are the same. Refrain from blaming or shaming self and others. This isn't about my fault or your fault or good guys and bad guys. This is about learning. This is about being present with each other. There's a right to pass. You can say, I pass. I'm a slow processor, so if something unexpected happens, it takes me a while to know, like what I think and how I feel about it. So I may take some time before I can really say what I feel, and that may be true of some of you too. Practicing self-focus, talk about my own experiences and responses, not speak for a whole group. Now you will be hearing me say white people this and white people that, but please understand that that's a sort of artifact of speech to try to it's sort of short for the nature of white conditioning. But in general, we're really talking from our own perspectives. And then try it on. In community, we try on new ideas, ways of doing things that you might not be familiar with, or maybe that aren't what you like or want. Yeah, so those are the agreements. Are there any questions, or is anybody new to these? You can raise your hand or you can just unmute and speak because I can't see everybody right now. Okay. All right, so let's stop the share. And so what I'd like to do is invite you into small groups. So we're going to do um, groups of four. We're going to offer you 15 minutes. And I'd really like you to just kind of introduce yourself, your name, where you're located geographically, and share whatever you feel like sharing about the questions that I asked in the opening practice. Why am I here hoping for? And I'm hoping that the third round, kind of brought up some additional insights and information. And I also request that you actually invite a literal timekeeper so that each person gets an equal amount of time. And if you're done speaking and your time isn't up, please just pause for the rest of the conversation. Because I'm a person, when I attend things and we do the small groups and we say, oh, please divide the time equally, I never get to speak because somehow other people are always wanting to talk more and I don't always want to interrupt people. So please have a timekeeper and divide the time evenly. And yeah, and if you can't be in a group, put X in front of your name. Um, did I forget anything else, Keegan?
No, so there's going to be groups of both 3 and 4.
Okay,
I will send out a reminder every 5 minutes through this 15-minute session. But as Crystal mentioned, if you could do your timekeeping, groups of 4 will have a little bit less time per person. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can ask for help and I'll join the room.
okay. So we'll come back at 10:46
All right.
Pacific time.
I'm going to pause the recording.
Talk a little bit about the class itself, and then we'll take a break and come back and talk about the Eightfold Path. So this is continuing on the path. So it's kind of a continuing series of courses. And some of you are new to me, and you may also be new to the course. So I wanted to offer both a special welcome and the most ridiculously brief summary of whiteness, kind of as we're talking about whiteness. So I've said many times, whiteness is not the color of my skin, it's a story. It's a story of white Christian European colonization of the world, and it's a story that's been repeated so often that we think it's true. We think it's real. Um, and it's very powerful right now in our world, and it arose at a particular time and it will go away again at a particular time. And that this myth of whiteness and white supremacy, it's maintained through social processes. Um, and we talk collectively about them as systemic racism, both interpersonal, my own beliefs, like belief in a meritocracy, or interpersonal, the way that I interact with other people, organizational, like the rules that are set up in a company around hiring or how we work together or who gets promoted, and systemic. So things like redlining, all kinds of legislation that make it more or less possible for people to engage in the social world and have access to resources. And when we enact our white conditioning, because we've been taught to be white, we had to learn it. There's nothing natural about it. When we reenact our white conditioning, it leads to a lot of harm. And so we're trying to investigate the story to see kind of, well, what is the story and how is the harm arising and what can I do to not participate in it, to disrupt that. And that essential commitment of the Buddhist practice is to non-harming. So a central goal of our practice is to support our kind of travel to the end of suffering, to support other people, and to try to free ourselves of the delusions and the conditioning that's at the root of our suffering. And so this is an effort to see through the delusion of whiteness and to disrupt it. And this is an important part of our ethical commitment in Buddhism. and our commitment to freedom from suffering for ourselves and for others. In the fall, we're going to do the foundations class again, I hope. So if you know people or you are newer in the practice, it'll be a good time to get a foundation in the basics, but that's the very quick basic. Um, Another thing I want to say about the class is that this is a difficult time to be, well, I guess it's always a difficult time, to talk about the practice in light of what's happening in the world. Two of the things that are happening in the world, of course, are climate change and the violence in Gaza and Israel. And that as a teacher, I find that I have only two options really. One is to talk about these things, knowing that as I speak, I'm speaking from my own limited knowledge and position and perspective, and that there's potential for harm, and that in these spaces, I hope that we can speak to each other when harm arises, and that people with, that we can bring all of our experiences in, even when it's uncomfortable, even when I embarrass myself through my ignorance, um, because the only alternative is to not talk about it. And I feel that our practice, my feeling is my practice, and I hope yours, that I want it to be in the world, that my practice is um, for the liberation of all, for the travel to the end of suffering. And so I'm inviting you into a brave space. And we use, at EBMC, we use the guidelines, and I hope we'll use our own courage and love for each other and the Dharma to find our way in this difficult space. So as I give examples, as I talk about the Eightfold Path, if something doesn't sit right with you, you can put it in the chat. You can email me later at whiteandawakening@eastbaymeditation.org, or you can speak to it right then if you're the kind of person who can just kind of like speak to it right then. So that's my hope, and that's my wish for us in these conversations. And then for each class, I'm actually going to give you practice or reflection. You can call it homework, but it's an invitation. And I hope that you will do them because it's a way of really kind of supplementing what we're doing together in the class. And as we talk about like what does it mean to be a white person in this world in the context of our commitment to practice, with all that's happening, I want to have more time in this class for you and your dilemmas or reflections. So each, and I want to, really build our capacity as a group to engage and support and wrestle with the difficult and divisive and polarizing stuff. So going forward, there'll be more time for you to bring kind of what's on your mind and what your challenges are, or what you're kind of excited about, or what's working for you, etc. And we'll look at it through the lens of the Eightfold Path, which is a deep and profound, obviously, teaching, since it's a central teaching of Buddhism. And then let me just end these remarks with the quote that I put on the information page about the class, because this always seems to happen, when I kind of turn my mind to, okay, what's the next class? Then something pops up that I feel like this is just so relevant. So this is from the Daily Utejaniya. And for those of you who don't have access to this, I've put it in the resources page. And Anna hopefully will put the link for that page in the chat several times today, and we'll also email it to you. But every day, Doug McGill sends out a quote, which is a wonderful basis for practice and reflection, I find. But on February 7th, he wrote, a mind which is focused on achieving a certain result is motivated by greed. Wisdom knows the cause-effect relationships, and it will therefore concentrate on fulfilling the causes and conditions. And so this is one of and this is very pertinent to the path that when we're trying to like get a particular thing done, that's out of greed. The wisdom of the path is that we need to work to create the causes and conditions that will allow a different future to unfold. Um, so anyway, all right. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. I invite you to uh, move around, stretch, stand up. I certainly will. And we'll come back at 9 minutes past the hour. If you're having access challenges, please stay on with Keegan, and she will help you. Okay, so see you. I think I'll share if I can find it. But as you know, the let's see. All right, let's try this. Um, so the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are the core of the Buddhist teaching. And it's said that this was the first teaching that he offered after his enlightenment. So as you know, he sat down under the Bodhi tree and said, I'm not going to get up again until I'm fully awakened." And so he kind of had his struggle with Mara. He awoke, and then he had something to eat, which was a good idea. And then he went to find the friends that he had been practicing with for 5 years. Very profound ascetic practices, almost starving himself to death. And so the first teaching that he offered was this teaching of the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering, that there is a cause of suffering, which is craving, which I'll come back to, that there's a cessation, a way of out of suffering, and then the path to the cessation of suffering, which is the Eightfold Path. And then interestingly, the Eightfold Path, and I'm going to expand this diagram, I hope you can still see it, that the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths actually interpenetrate, because the path to cessation of suffering is the Noble Eightfold Path, but the first two, the first, not step, but the first factor of the Eightfold Path is right view, and right view is defined as full penetration of the Four Noble Truths. So they are completely interwoven, and you'll know this if you study Buddhism, that you always seem to be kind of going back to the same thing around and around, only it's completely different each time, but then it's also the same. So just to say that based on the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path is usually defined into three categories. And what I want to talk about today is the wisdom component, which is right view and right intention, which I'm going to call wise view and wise intention, just because right seems to suggest that there's also a wrong. So we're down here in this bottom left hand of the path. So the reason that wise view and wise intention are so important is that they set set in motion everything that follows. Where wise view is the Buddhist perception of reality, the Buddhist understanding of reality, natural reality, and wise intention is how we condition ourselves, how we prepare ourselves, how we make the mind ready to engage in wise action, wise speech, etc., the rest of the path factors. So wise view has several components to it. So one component is the understanding of karma, which simply put is the understanding that actions have consequences. And in particular, wholesome actions have wholesome consequences, unwholesome acts have unwholesome consequences. And the Buddha, of course, has a very detailed understanding of what wholesome and unwholesome is. But wholesome is basically, the familiar things of not stealing, not harming, not engaging in sexual misconduct, the four aspects of wise speech, avoiding covetousness, avoiding ill will, and uh, consistency with the Four Noble Truths. So the important thing there of the view of this aspect of wise view is that the way that I act in the world in body, speech, and mind has an impact. And it has a quality of impact according to the wholesomeness or unwholesomeness of the intention. Another aspect of wise view is the Four Noble Truths, and in particular, the understanding that the cause of suffering is craving. So this is articulated in different ways at different times. In the context of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says craving for sense pleasures, that is for material goods, for pleasant experiences, etc. Craving for being, that is wanting to be a certain type of person or to look this way or to be considered in this way or have things come out this way. And then craving for non-being, just wanting to be rid of it all, to be away, to not exist. And so this kind of craving is at the root of suffering. And so letting go of that craving is a critical aspect of the path. The understanding of reality in the Four Noble Truths, as Ruth King would say, is that life is imperfect, it's impersonal, and it's impermanent. And another way of talking about suffering is it's mistaking what's impersonal, imperfect, and impermanent for something that's personal, perfect, or permanent. You can also think of it as like always wanting things to be different than they are. So this cause of suffering is a very fundamental aspect of the understanding, and it comes up over and over again in our practice and in our way of seeing things. So what does this give us? It gives us an understanding that our actions have impact, that the quality of actions, that is their wholesomeness or unwholesomeness, is a central aspect of our work and our practice, that craving is a fundamental cause of suffering, and that the world, all phenomena are impersonal, imperfect, and impermanent. And the reason why this view is so important is that it, like I said, it sets up for everything that follows. Like it creates a version of the world, because if I live in a world that's about good guys and bad guys, good versus evil, where getting lots of stuff for myself is important and, whoever dies with the most stuff wins, like that leads me on one path. And in a situation like Gaza and Israel, it means I have to like figure out like who's the good people, who are the bad people, and I have to fight against the bad people and fight for the good people. And that's a very different understanding of things than the Buddhist understanding, which is that the world is a constant unfolding of causes and conditions. It's the outflow of endless cycles of karma. So that when we're looking at the situation in Israel and Gaza, for example, it isn't a story of good guys and bad guys. It's a story of complex causes and conditions bringing different parties to horrible actions that are understandable, that have flown from prior actions. And so that brings us to a very different understanding of how we should be acting. What the benefit of our practice or our anti-racist action might be. So that's wise view, which is like this is kind of the picture of reality, if you will. then wise intention provides this sense of direction. Okay, given that understanding, then how do I orient myself towards the world? How do I organize myself? And the three aspects of wise intention are renunciation, non-harming, and non-ill will. And so the Buddha is saying, okay, I have seen into the nature of reality, and these are the aspects to cultivate in order to move forward on the path, in order to cultivate wisdom, in order to see the way to the end of suffering. So when we think about simplicity, or when we think about renunciation, and I'm going to focus on renunciation now because last year we talked a lot about metta and karuna, which are actually the practices for developing non-harming and non-ill will. So that the practice of metta and karuna, of loving kindness and compassion, like these are the fundamental attitudes towards the world, towards others, towards kind of how we carry ourselves, that we are cultivating as wise intention, because then as wise intention, that informs all of our later actions. And it helps us condition the mind to be mindful and concentrated, which are the concentration aspects of the path. So renunciation can get a bad rap. And I remember one of the early classes that I taught, and I started talking about renunciation, and this woman raises her hand and she said, I am not ready to give up my house. I thought, oh, well, that's a big step, the house. But that's kind of where our mind goes. I have to give up all my stuff. I have to, you know, move into a shack, or I have to give all my money away, or I have to, like it becomes very concrete, as if an external action is required, or as if there's a giving up, there's a pressure, there's a self-denial. But in fact, the way renunciation works is by investigating the nature of suffering, the attractiveness of the things we have fall away. So a kind of, I don't know how good an example this is, but the example that comes to mind is, EBMC has a fragrance-free policy. So in our in-person gatherings, we ask that people come fragrance-free, that you not wear perfume, that you wash your clothes in unscented laundry detergent, etc. And I remember when I was first getting to know EBMC, and I would come to events with fragrance on, and I think, oh darn, I forgot this time. I just sprayed the perfume. What's the big deal anyway? And I would get there and give somebody an asthma attack or like a horrible headache. And I thought, well, this is so interesting because I'm not intending this harm, but I'm clearly harming. And like, what is that about? And I liked the perfume. I didn't really think much about laundry detergent, like whatever. But as I investigated it, I thought, oh, why fragrance? And I don't mean like, fresh flowers or something. I'm talking about like chemical fragrances created by, beauty companies. And then I started noticing like sort of the conditioning of advertising and how I actually associated this scent, this chemical scent with, beauty and loveliness and all these things. And once I investigated the nature of the fragrance and the nature of my attachment to it, it stopped being attractive. Like I stopped doing it. It was like, oh well, it's not that big a deal. And like in this same way, as we crave sense pleasures, right? There's three cravings: crave, sense pleasure, being, and non-being. There's a craving for sense pleasures. I crave that new car. I crave the home remodel. I crave, I just really want these things. But if we investigate them, like as I get the new car or as I, do the fancy kitchen remodel or something, and then like, am I at peace now? Am I happy now? Like, am I completely satisfied? And it's like, well, not really. Because as soon as I get the new car, I need a new something else. Like the training of capitalism, the training of greed, in effect, is that I always want more stuff. But when I really look into it, I realize, well, that's actually not the path to the end of suffering. And so it's not that I'm denying myself a fancy car or that, I struggle with denying myself this kitchen remodel or, my 10th pair of sneakers or whatever it is. It's that when I investigate it, I realize, oh, that's actually not the path to happiness. It's not actually the path to the end of suffering. And so the wish for it kind of dissipates. It becomes like not so desirable. It falls away. And so when we're talking about renunciation, we're not talking about like this tense giving up. We're talking about letting go. We're talking about investigating the nature of craving. And as it loses its attractiveness, things fall away. And it leads to a simple, much simpler way of living, a much less pressed way of living. Like there is no keeping up with the Joneses in Buddhism. And it frees up energy, it frees up your time and your resources to do other things with. And it leads to the end of suffering, to let go of craving. So that's renunciation. Okay, so we've got the wise view, which is an understanding that actions have consequences, that craving is the cause of suffering, that all phenomena are impermanent, imperfect, and impersonal. And then we have the wise intention, which teaches us to cultivate renunciation, non-ill will, and non-harming through the practices of investigating the impact of kind of greed, and the practice of metta and compassion. And so, like, what does this have to do with whiteness, right? We're here because we share white conditioning. So the thing about whiteness is that it is a particular delusion, like it's a particular kind of conditioning that is very powerful at this moment in time and in this culture. And because it's hard to see, since part of the conditioning is, oh, well, I'm just normal, I'm just average, I'm just regular, as opposed to I'm white and I have certain privileges and I'm seen and constructed in a certain way. Because it's hard to see, we need to investigate it, and we investigate it with other white people because it's like there's a particular path of development for us and a particular path of inquiry, and to create a safe enough space and a space that doesn't burden BIPOC, we do it as a group of white people. So the wise view, wise intention, it relates to whiteness for one thing, because like our behavior has impact. And as a white person, my conditioning makes me blind or makes me unaware of certain, sorry for that language, makes me unaware of certain impacts. And so I'm investigating whiteness not to find out like how bad a person I am, but so that I can understand, oh, that's an artifact of whiteness, the idea that like I should be welcome everywhere, that I should be first, um, kind of all of those aspects of whiteness. And that when I enact them, when I see myself as like the norm, or when I don't take, other people into account, it leads to suffering and it harms people. And I'm into non-harming, so when I see that, I can stop doing that. Um, when we see whiteness as like who I am, this is a craving, right? This is clinging to an identity. Like I am Crystal, I am a good person, I am a great anti-racist, I'm a good teacher, I'm, whatever. It's like when we hang on to these identities, when we mistake them for real. Now we're in the doctrine of non-self, right? Um, uh, things not being personal, you know. Um, if I see myself So like the clinging to whiteness, taking the example of wanting to be like the good white person, or feeling guilty for being white, or for being privileged, or being fortunate. Um, like this is painful, but it's predicated on the view that whiteness is personal and that the world is about goodness and badness. But whiteness isn't personal. Whiteness is something I was trained into. It's a social location. The more we look at whiteness, the more it falls apart, right? I mean, think about Israel and Palestine. We've talked in former classes about how, the whiteness of Jews is qualitatively different than the whiteness of Christians, because Jews, in America, many experience white privilege and yet are also the target of virulent anti-Semitism from white nationalists, white supremacists. And we see in Israel, um, you know, uh, the enactment of whiteness, the enactment of colonization by a people who themselves are deeply oppressed. So whiteness is definitely not simple. And whiteness is something to cling to, and letting go of it frees me to, oh, so I'm not going to support whiteness. I'm not going to enact that. I'm not going to turn away from the suffering. I'm not going to, um, yeah, I'm not going to commit to this. Whiteness has conditioned us into certain patterns of greed, aversion, and delusion. We want to hold on to our privilege. We want to hold on to the material advantages. We want to hold on to the perceived safety. For example, to live in a safe neighborhood, to be free of the danger of police violence. From my position as a white person, like equal opportunity means less opportunity for people with my skin color by definition. And so these are all things that clinging makes difficult, it makes sticky. And that if I can see, oh, like that's a delusion, that's based on a story, I can more easily let go of it. And we can also see like the enactment of whiteness on a social level, on like a global level. Like in patriarchal white supremacist capitalism, we are taught to pursue happiness through power, domination, sense pleasures, material wealth. These are the values that drove the European colonization of the globe. And this has been a powerful contributor to the climate crisis. On the one hand, because we're saying, okay, more stuff is better, and we imagine that resources are limited and nature is something to be conquered, it's something that we can own. And on the other hand, because the impact of global warming is felt much more powerfully by people who are poor, by animals, by plants and other beings that don't have a voice, and that the wealthy, white-dominated human world doesn't pay too much attention to that. And so like a global kind of manifestation of whiteness is the climate crisis. It's the seeing of other beings as objects and wealth as the goal, and imagining that there's like an away where we can throw things. And now I'm going to just offer a comment on Israel and Palestine. And again, I'm offering these because I think it's really important for us to talk about this and be able to be in community around it. So yeah, just please take it in the way that I'm offering it. Notice what happens in the body. I'm going to ask for comments after this, so I'm kind of at the end of this talk part. But I would suggest that the trauma of the Jewish people through millennia of violence that include the Shoah, that has fixed the Israeli government in the delusion that domination, violence, and murder is the only way to ensure their safety. And in particular, the Netanyahu government, so that there's a delusion that this violence can bring safety. And that from the point of view of karma, the bombing of civilians and starving the survivors is deeply unwholesome. That is, that isn't a sideshow happening outside here. That is an action that cannot lead to peace. It cannot lead to safety. But the Hamas action on October 7th is also deeply unwholesome. And neither of these can lead to wholesome results. They're understandable in the logical sense, given the respective worldviews, that their actions are following a certain logic, but they cannot bring an end to suffering. That is, if peace comes, it will come because of some measures taken by other people, people like us, I hope. So I hope that that sideshow wasn't too noisy. Um, So again, when we're looking at our anti-racist action, or when we're looking at how we engage in the world from the perspective of wise view and wise intention, we are asking ourselves, are we operating from a wholesome perspective? Are we paying attention to the myriad causes and conditions, to the impersonal nature of the unfolding of reality? And as we move, are we moving in a way that cultivates metta, that cultivates compassion, and that moves us towards letting go of the conditioning of craving? So I'm going to stop there because I could go on and on. That's not always the most exciting part of these classes. Um, so let's stop the recording, and I want to end. So heading for the homework. Um, in the resource list, Anna, if you would go ahead and put the resource list link in again. The invitation for the homework, I've talked about wholesome and unwholesome kind of motivations and actions. And so I've offered one of the lists that describes those 10 unwholesome or unwholesome actions. And 3 of them are characteristics of mind. And what I would like you to do, if you would, kind of take the time to read the 3 of the mind. That is, not being greedy, not focusing only on taking, not thinking hateful and destructive thoughts, and cultivating right view. And reflect on your own, I don't know, like relationship to whiteness or relationship to activism or whatever it is. And just like, what are the things that really stand out for you? So like, as an example of, the Israel-Gaza situation, I found myself very affected by clinging to the image of myself as like someone who knows, or as a good teacher, or as a person with a lot of Jewish friends. And it turned out that I'm also a person who was quite ignorant of the history of Palestine. And that once I started kind of reading more and listening more, and understanding like the complexity or actually the simplicity of that situation, I was really surprised to kind of feel this rush of sort of shame and like self-criticism, self-judgment. Right? This is clinging to this view that I'm one who knows or I'm a teacher. Like this is a cause of suffering, and it gets in the way of actually taking in the information and actually examining what's going on and understanding kind of what is the view, what is the yeah, and what is the wholesome intention? Like, what is the practice of compassion in this moment? And I think that in white conditioning, because we try not to talk about whiteness, because there's often a lot of punishment for talking about whiteness, we can get very stuck in thinking, oh, I know what's going on, or I shouldn't have to look at this new stuff. But like, we actually do have to. So Keegan has been kind enough to put the homework in the chat. So using your practice time, again, I hope that you have as close to a daily practice as you can. but just reflect on what brings you to this work or this class or this conversation. Like in our efforts to learn about whiteness or engage in anti-racist action to create the conditions for a world of less suffering, which of the wholesome and unwholesome factors are most present? Another place that craving shows up is like, I'm the heroic anti-racist activist. I am so great and fantastic. I'm an awesome white person. You know, all these ways we have of like clinging to this ego ideal as if on the one hand, I can be so great, people should admire me. Or on the other hand, like I'm really bad because I'm white and I have to somehow make up for it. Like those are equally harmful. Those are equally problematic aspects of clinging. So I'd just like to invite you to investigate your own kind of intentions and again, focusing on the wholesome and unwholesome aspect of it. Any questions on the homework? So in the resources, I've also offered a link to a download. For those of you who like Bhikkhu Bodhi, it's a lovely, brief, super geeky description of the Eightfold Path. It's very, very helpful, I find. I also put in some videos for people who prefer the video. It's actually from the secular Buddhist community, but you know, there's a way that it's a very concise summary of the Eightfold Path factors if you're wanting a refresher on those. And then for next time, oh yeah, I think for next time I put the what did I put for next time? Oh, right, the Ayasanta Chitta talk, in a sacred shitstorm, we can still walk the Noble Eightfold Path. I thought that was a good comment. And then also a really nice piece by Maricela B. Gomez on Buddhist teachings and racial and social justice that you can download. So lots of stuff to do in the next couple weeks if you feel so moved. I wanted to talk about Donna donating to the class. Access needs. So a couple of people have asked me what the deal is with the Eventbrite, you know, that says like $500. So at EBMC, we are inviting you to be part of our community and to contribute to that community. Normally, we invite Donna for the teacher and Donna for the center separately. For those of you who've been part of the White and Awakening series, you know that as teachers in this series, we offer our Dana back to East Bay Meditation Center. That is, we ask that you support the center rather than us financially, because it's a twofold practice of reparation that you're supporting. That is the teaching, so offering a space for white people to kind of come more into the Dharma of whiteness and anti-racism, but also to financially support a Sangha that was founded to center the needs of BIPOC and other marginalized communities. So that's the invitation for Dana. And if you would like to become a monthly donor, a friend of EBMC, that would be totally awesome. We're doing our friend drive now. So if you're not already a friend, consider becoming one. And Anna or Keegan, am I forgetting anything?
I don't believe so. I put the link for the resource page for donations. And also, if any questions or access needs come up, you can contact White and Awakening at eastbaymeditation.org. And that link is provided as well.
Okay. So let's just take a moment then to, I'm going to dedicate the merit. And if you'd like to, again, kind of recheck in with the body and find a position that puts your body at ease to the extent that your body can be put at ease. Again, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, to close your eyes, or just lower your gaze. So appreciating the wholesome intentions of our gathering today, appreciating the choice to come together in conversation and in community that reflects our commitment to the path of freedom, the path to the end of suffering. And may any merit that we have gained through the practice together today be offered freely for the benefit of all beings. May all beings everywhere, throughout time and space, in all directions, through all time, without exception, be free of suffering. Thank you for your presence today. If you want to unmute and say goodbye,